What's up guys, Kplays here. How has everyone been enjoying Wilds? I've been taking my time having fun through the main story of the game, although now that I'm in high rank, I'm blasting through the progression, partially to start getting some info videos out for you guys, and partially because the endgame meta for Hunting Horn, it's looking very sweet. I've also been farming to make every single horn to review for you guys, because Wilds is taking the Generations Ultimate and Rise Sunbreak approach of making reasonably competitive max upgrades for every weapon tree. Attack stats in this game range from about 200 to 250, with that high end being a bit of an exception. The average is more around the 230-ish range. This basically means that on top of the attack up song rebalance, if there's a song list that you like that's not quite a meta option, you won't actually be all that far behind should you choose to use it. But with options that are all this competitive, where exactly do you start? Well, that's exactly what this little two-parter is going to be for. I'm going to be giving you guys what I think are the go-to horns to make, starting in this video with what you'll have available in low rank, and then in the next part we'll go over your options after you enter high rank. Again, I'll be giving each hunting horn its own dedicated coverage, so this is going to be more of a brief overview for game progression reasons. Without further ado though, let's get right into it. The first horn we have available, of course, is the good old Hope horn we've had our hands on ever since the demo. Love the looks, but as the game goes on, this one will unfortunately start to lag behind. Keep it upgraded if you want to craft the trees that branch off it later down the line, especially since Gemma essentially just gives you the parts for free, but most of you will want to drop it before too long in favor of better stats and new song lists. If you want my absolutely basic, minimal farming required, use this until credit roll suggestion, I'd say that the classic ore line is a pretty good bet. Any horn with points in Maestro will be helpful while you don't have access to decorations through the main story, because on top of the buff duration increase that the game mentions, it also increases the range and durations of your bubbles. On top of that, the sharpness on these bagpipes is decent for what you'll have available around the time of each upgrade. You get good songs like earplugs for when the monsters start roaring loud enough to stun, or aquatic and oil silt mobility for terrain that'll slow you down, and echo wave slicing if you want to attempt to cut some tails. Personally though, throughout most of my playthrough, I kinda sorta either forgot to bring this along for monsters with tails to cut, or forgot to go for the tail cut entirely because of those natural blunt weapon user go for the head instincts. So is this reliable for tail cuts? That's definitely something I'll have to test. Do you tend to get a lot of tail cut parts from normal cars and crest warlords anyway though? Absolutely, so it hasn't been up there in the things to test list. I will come back to it in my video on echo waves though, so we'll definitely get there. Moving on in progression though, once we get to the Scarlet Forest, two pretty interesting options become accessible: the Congalala and Vespoid horns. In past games, if you cared about the effectiveness of your song list, you'd probably skip right over both of these. But in Wilds, a lot of the more unassuming options get their chance to shine thanks to some new mechanics. Case in point, the War Bongo. This thing, surprisingly, is being considered for one of, if not the best raw horns in endgame, and also a solid pick for multiplayer. Why? Well, for starters, this is another Maestro horn so it gets points from that alone. Aside from the free skills though, there's two main reasons. The first is this absolutely ridiculous attack and affinity bubble. You and anyone else standing in it will immediately gain a 10% attack boost and 25% affinity. That's nuts to just casually get in early low rank, with next to no affinity skills and attack up not getting to 10% until you reach the high rank song list. This is currently the only horn that gets this bubble in the game, so until we get some new ones, it gains a huge advantage from that alone. The second factor that helps it strive is having Melody of Life. This special performance does a decent heal of about 30 health. Nothing crazy the later you progress, especially since Life Powders and Dust of Life exist for team play, but it does have the benefit of being essentially free. With the defensive songs, an emergency heal in your back pocket, and small healing songs to use for more conventional recitals, War Bongo ups your survivability and saves you some resources should you choose to use it during the story, all while skipping over the usual sacrifice and offenses you'd normally expect with such a supportive horn like that, thanks to that bubble. Embrace the pink monkey horn, folks. The Vespoid horn, on the other hand, well, what it lacks in raw power, it makes up for in some crazy utility. Paralysis on Hunting Horn, well, see, it almost feels like cheating. Again, this is something we'll go over in detail during the Echo Wave breakdown, but long story short, Hunting Horn is now capable of dropping a ton of status on monsters. We're talking like bowgun status ammo amounts here. While we can't swap between multiple statuses like they can, the one a horn can apply will be applied several times per hunt. With bubbles being AoE based damage, we love ourselves a nice stationary target, so to get one at minimum like 3 to 5 times per hunt, feels good, man. Feels real good. Especially when you can work in KOs between paras for even more lockdown, or pin a monster down for a totally free head to tail resounding melody. If there's ever a monster you don't feel like dealing with, or just want to bully it, pick yourself up a Parahorn. There will be a better option in the endgame, but for now, this one works just fine. Past those, around the midpoint of the low rank story, you get a lot of new choices, but 2 power upgrades stand out among them. Ray Dao and Ajarakan. The former will bring beta players back to a familiar white, red, yellow song list, but with 2 changes. The Echo Wave is Thunder this time around instead of Blunt, and it trades out the movement and evasion bubble for health regen. Contrary to what you might think, you don't really need to match Thunder to Thunder weak monsters just yet. It certainly helps to aim for elemental weaknesses, sure, but without proper builds, it's nothing to worry about min-maxing just yet. You'll still want to use Echo Wave Recital combos as your main damage loop because of their good motion values. And extra elemental damage, even on resistant monsters, is still free damage. When you do these in your bubbles, you'll enjoy a nice bit of extra survivability from the regen effects. I like that these seem to be slightly stronger than the regen buffs in World and Rise from their hunting horns. As long as you aren't taking hits back to back, you can reasonably rely on these to consistently heal off the damage you take without ever really having to go off the offensive. Not quite as much burst healing as you get from a horn with proper healing songs or a Melody of Life, but it's pretty consistent. Looking over to our other option from the Oil Well Basin, we have a similar situation to what we're looking at with the Vesvoid Horn, except instead of a power trade for exceptional lockdown, we just get more free damage. Like Ray Dao, we get a solid chunk of green, higher raw than other options, and attack up for a more conventional set of stats compared to past games. But what the Ajarakan Horn has that wasn't available back then is Echo Wave Blast. 2 words, folks. Explosions. What's that? The second word? I can't give you the second word because it blew up. See, the application of Blast Ailment that racks up when you get to the Recital combo loops is so high that you'll be seeing extra pops of damage going off almost constantly when using this horn. Against monsters with low rank health pools, this can shred hunts pretty fast if you play aggressively enough. Between these two, if I had to choose, I'd probably say that Ray Dao is a bit better due to its slightly higher stats and access to Horn Maestro, but I still have to mention Ajarakan solely for the status shenanigans you're able to pull off with it. Lastly, we have our 2 final options that become available after getting to the last map. If you haven't gotten through the story yet, this may be where you want to head out of the video because past this point, we're in spoiler territory. If you're not worried about those or have already gotten to this point, let's get into it then. You ready? Last chance to bail. Okay then. Guardian Rathalos and Guardian Arkveld. These 2 share a song list and that can be attained relatively close to each other in the story, so I'll discuss them both as a pair. Guardian Rathalos is available first, conveniently just in time to net you a resounding melody and some nice fire damage against Jin Dahad. You can use this as your hard hitter throughout the rest of the story and a bit into early high rank, because until this point nothing really beats it in terms of full package stats. Guardian Arkveld might have 10 more raw, but with the significantly shorter green sharpness and 25% less effective affinity, it isn't the best trade-off. It becomes a solid raw option once you get into endgame setups, but again, that's later down the line. The main reason I have to shout it out is that it technically has a very, very slight elemental advantage against the final boss, and its Blight and Ailment negating bubble is a lot more useful in that fight and the long run for Hunting Horn users than Guardian Wrath's stamina regen. This might, and that's a big might, come into play with max might uptime later on, but that's more late end the game talk. For where we are now, Guardian Arkveld's horn also takes it in built-in skills with max Horn Maestro in my opinion. That whopping 80% chance to not lose sharpness from Guardian Wrath's Master's Touch might seem big, and to be fair, it is. But with the amount of affinity you're able to reach at this point in the game, it doesn't exactly reach full potential just yet. Critical Element is also either bugged in this version of the game, or too low for us to really even bother worrying about with Hunting Horn, so that's not really a plus here either. Now, I would love to talk about the classic, ever so valuable final boss's Hunting Horn, but as some of you may know at this point, there isn't one. Weird choice on Capcom's part if you ask me, since they're essentially doing the same main story isn't fully finished until the title updates like they did in Rise. But I'm assuming that we will get that round 2 with Zoshia at some point in the title updates. Hopefully the first one next month. That'll give us some proper gear. On that note, these are pretty much the best picks at low rank. In part 2 we'll be going over the high rank selection. Some of these do make a reappearance, but our choices post-credits really spread out into some uncharted territory for Hunting Horn. Can't wait to talk about these after I finish grinding them all out. So then, suffice it to say, for now though, Wilds is going to have a really fun meta compared to last game. There's no solid, raw, use this against everything Hunting Horn. Well, technically speaking there is, but the variables you'll be able to get with that still makes it so that you have some options. Expect that part 2 on high rank picks to come out very soon, and comment down below if there's any other Hunting Horn info you'd like me to go over. Until then though, this has been another KPlays, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.